They're supposed to be places of joy, bright lights, screams of excitement, childhood memories. But sometimes, when the music cuts out, when the rides stop too suddenly, and when the exits are farther than they look, amusement parks become something else entirely. Tonight, you're about to hear 3 terrifying stories inspired by real events, reconstructed for storytelling. Stories where people went in smiling and never left the same. Welcome back to Story Time. If you enjoy true horror stories like these, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because once you hear these stories, you'll never ride the same again.
The day started like a normal park day. Bright sky, long lines, that electric feeling people get when they're about to do something reckless for fun. You could hear the ride before you saw it, the clacking chain lift, the metallic rattle of wheels, and the screams, some excited, some not so sure. The Smiler was famous for being intense. Twists, inversions, speed that felt like your body was trying to leave you behind. In the queue, people joked about passing out. Someone said, "If I die on here, post my snaps." Everybody laughed. 16 riders boarded the train. Harnesses clicked, the lap bars locked. The operator gave the signal, and the train rolled forward like it always had. Confident, practiced, hungry. But earlier, something had already gone wrong. A fault had happened. The kind that most guests never notice. Something in the system that made the ride pause and reset. In the behind-the-scenes world of lights, sensors, and checks, engineers were working on it. Later, after manual intervention, an empty train was sent around to test the track. It didn't clear the section it was supposed to clear. That part matters, because that's the kind of detail that becomes a ghost in every survivor's memory. To the guests, none of that existed. They just saw a ride doing ride things. The train climbed, the wind got colder, the park looked smaller, then it dropped, fast, throwing bodies into restraints, turning screams into laughter, into that high, thin sound people make when their instincts realize they're not in control. And somewhere ahead, somewhere the riders couldn't see, another train was stopped on the track. A train that shouldn't have been there. The collision happened in a split second. One moment, motion. The next, impact so violent it felt like reality cracked. Metal slammed into metal. Seats jolted forward like punches. The sound wasn't just loud. It was wrong. Not the normal roar of a coaster. This was the sound of a machine breaking rules. People were thrown against restraints so hard they couldn't breathe. A girl screamed and couldn't stop, even when her voice started to fail. Someone shouted, "My legs, my legs!" And the words came out raw like they weren't even sure they belonged to them. The ride stopped, but it didn't feel over. Because when you're strapped into a seat and the world is shaking, the body doesn't accept stopped as safe. The train was wedged into the other train, trapped, hanging in a position where gravity didn't know what it wanted to do. Then came the silence. Not peaceful silence, witness silence, like the park itself was staring. People tried to lift their restraints. They wouldn't move. Some started praying. Some started bargaining. Some went into shock so fast their faces went blank and their mouths trembled like they were trying to speak to a world that wouldn't answer. Rescue crews arrived. Riders were cut free from the wreckage. The injuries were severe, some life-changing. Later reporting described the crash as involving human error and failures around safe systems and manual intervention. But here's the part that sticks with you, the part survivors often say is the real horror. After the impact, while they sat suspended, hearing distant footsteps and radio chatter below, many of them truly believed the ride could start again. Because if a ride can send a train into a space that wasn't clear, what else can it do? And even after they were rescued, even after hospital lights and clean bandages, The riders reported something that didn't show up on any medical chart. They couldn't unhear the collision. They'd be sitting in their rooms at night, and the sound would come back, metal and screaming, and the sudden realization that fun can become catastrophe without warning. Now imagine being the next person who walks up to a coaster, smiling, ready for thrills, never knowing how thin the line really is between ride and wreck. They called it verrückt, crazy. And for a while, that name was branding, a dare, a headline. From the bottom, it looked like a skyscraper built for screams, a giant staircase climbing into the sky. People took pictures next to it like they were standing beside something legendary. The rules were simple. Meet the height requirement, strap in, hold on. The rafts fit multiple riders. You went down fast, so fast the world blurred, and then you hit a second hill. That second hill was where the fear changed shape. On August 7th, 2016, a 10-year-old boy named Caleb Schwab rode verrückt. People in line said the wind was strong that day. Others said the slide felt rougher than usual. A few mentioned the straps, how they didn't feel as secure as they should. Rumors about the ride had existed for a while, the kind of chatter parks don't want spreading. That thing goes airborne sometimes, but most people still climb the steps, because that's what humans do when something is marketed as the tallest, the wildest, the most extreme. Caleb rode in a raft with 2 adult women. There are details that became heavily discussed later, where riders were seated, how weight distribution can affect how a raft travels, what restraints should have been used for that kind of speed. Investigations and reporting focused on design choices and safety considerations that in hindsight read like warning signs people missed because the day still felt normal. When the raft launched, it flew down the drop like it always did, fast enough to steal your breath. But at the second hill, something went wrong in a way no one expects from fun. Witnesses described sudden chaos, a moment where movement didn't look controlled anymore, a moment that turned a thrill ride into an emergency scene before anyone could process what they were seeing. The park stopped. People heard shouting that wasn't the playful kind. Staff rushed with the kind of urgency that makes your stomach drop, because you can tell instantly when something has crossed into irreversible territory. In the aftermath, the ride was shut down. News spread quickly, and the story became one of the most infamous modern amusement park tragedies because it wasn't just an accident. It was a reminder that extreme attractions live close to the edge of physics, and when physics wins, it doesn't compromise. Investigations examined the ride's design and restraint system, including concerns about how riders could interact with netting and support structures at high speeds, and later reporting covered legal actions and charges, some later dropped. But the horror for the people who were there wasn't only the headline. It was the quiet after. It was the way the stairs looked afterward, still towering, still ordinary, like the structure itself refused to acknowledge what had happened. Families who had been laughing 20 minutes earlier stood frozen, holding each other, realizing amusement parks are built to feel safe even when they're not. Bright colors don't mean protection. Height doesn't mean engineering has defeated risk. And for a long time after that day, people who had ridden verrückt before reported the same unsettling thought. They remembered the moment at the second hill, the split-second lightness in your stomach, the sensation of floating, and they realized how terrifying it is to know that sometimes that floating feeling isn't just a thrill. Sometimes it's the warning. The ghost train was designed to scare you. It had dark tunnels, sudden sounds, cheap tricks Things that made kids scream and then laugh right after because they knew it wasn't real. That's the deal with haunted attractions. Fear with a safe ending. On the night of June 9th, 1979 at Luna Park, Sydney, that deal was broken. The ride cars rolled into the darkness like they always did. Families leaned close. Kids held each other's sleeves. The smell inside was old wood, dust, mechanical grease, the scent of something built long ago and kept alive by routine. Then people noticed smoke. At first, it wasn't the kind of smoke that makes you run. It leaked out gently, like fog, like another special effect. Some riders even thought it was part of the show, because the ghost train had a fake fireplace effect inside. But smoke got thicker. It didn't swirl like fog. It spread like a living thing. Someone shouted, "That's real!" Panic hits different in the dark. You don't know where the walls are. You don't know if the screams are part of the attraction or a warning. People began yelling for operators. Ride attendants started pulling riders out as cars exited. Inside, the tunnels became a trap. Fire doesn't care about theme. It doesn't care about costumes or laughter. It eats what it finds. 7 people died that night, 6 children and 1 adult. The cause of death was linked to burns and carbon monoxide poisoning. And what makes this story even darker, what turns tragedy into lasting horror, is that the cause became disputed and controversial over decades. Early investigations and later reviews led to arguments, questions, and calls for renewed inquiry. Even years later, reporting continued to discuss uncertainty around how the fire started and whether earlier investigations were sufficient. But in the moment, inside the ride, none of that mattered. What mattered was the confusion, because if you're on a ghost train and you see fire, your brain wants to label it as fake. Your brain wants to protect itself from panic. That delay, seconds, maybe a minute, can be the difference between escape and disaster. Survivors and accounts describe how quickly the situation changed. Smoke pouring from tunnel doors, people realizing too late, staff scrambling, emergency response rushing toward a ride built like a wooden maze. Imagine being a parent in that park, hearing the first scream and not knowing if it's joy or terror. Imagine seeing smoke and assuming it's part of the theme. Imagine realizing the theme is now real. The ghost train was destroyed. The park closed. The place that had sold playful fear became a symbol of the worst kind, the kind that doesn't end when you step back into the light. And ever since, that tragedy has carried a chilling lesson that's hard to shake. The scariest haunted attraction isn't the one with the best special effects. It's the one where people can't tell the difference between fake and fatal until it's too late. If these stories made your heart race, imagine how many others are still hidden. If you enjoy true scary stories, real-life horror, and chilling reconstructions, subscribe to Story Time, hit that like button, and comment below which story disturbed you the most, because the scariest places aren't abandoned. They're the ones still open.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to tap the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when a new video drops. Until next time, my friends.